and I was really trying to, really get myself into a good market that I could still afford. At the time, I still wasn't on a very big salary. I think I was probably in the 50,000s kind of per annum salary.
This is Property Investory, where we talk to successful property investors to find out more about their stories, mindset, and strategies. I'm Taran Sham, and in this episode, we're speaking with award-winning Property Investor of the Year, Sam Gordon, who has a track record of building a portfolio of over 20 properties under the age of 30. Join us as we learn about the renovation from hell, as well as discussing how to turn rundown properties into usable, accessible equity, and so much more. Did you know you can also get the show notes from our website for this episode? It's got Sam Gordon's main strategies, tips, and inside secrets that can be useful in your own property journey. The show notes will give you the inside scoop on the little gold nuggets of wisdom all our guests share from their backstory and all their overall strategies and philosophies. Plus, you'll get a copy of their advice broken down and shared in a quick and easy to consume format. Just head over to propertyinvestory.com/notes and download it today. But for now, let's dive into the meat of this topic. Gordon and I jumped straight in and he explains how he came across the property, which would ultimately change his renovation strategy for the better.
This one was based off, I was looking to move into the Brisbane market. This was back in 2016, I think it was. The market was doing pretty well and there was a lot of good stuff around. And pretty much I was trying to find a really good little reno project. I was looking to do that for my next one. And essentially I came across a fair few properties I was negotiating on. And this one had really stagnated on the market. They were trying to get up near 300,000 for it because it was quite a good house. It was a double brick. It was on a pretty big block. It was its own medium density, big 4-bedder house. The problem was it was very dilapidated and it would need a bit of work to kind of get it back up to scratch. And I think they were trying to target kind of like a homeowner buyer for it. And it just didn't really go to plan, the old sales campaign on it. So by the time I came around to it, I actually started the negotiations about, I think they had it on the market at the time. When they first listed, it was offers over 299. I think when I offered it on it was about 265. And I offered 200 grand for it just as a starting bid to see how we went. And essentially kind of after a lot of backwards and forwards, we got it done at 215. And after building and pest, I was able to get a little bit more off. So I ended up buying that one for 212,000.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing. How long was it on the market for?
It was on the market for I think it was just over 80 days. So it was coming a 90-day window where the exclusive agency agreement kind of runs out. So the agent definitely wanted to try and get a deal done before that ran out. So I think she helped me out a little bit, putting the pressure on the owner there to get the deal done.
Always the agent ends up, because they obviously know that if it runs out, then they're going to try and get them to get it not exclusive. And then on top of that, I guess that 90 days that they've had it in there, it's kind of like, okay, what am I going to do? I need a commission. It should be a pretty easy one. And it sounds like there's a motivation behind it. Did you find out what the motivation was behind why the vendor was wanting to sell?
Essentially, the owners of the owner of that property, it was an Aboriginal kind of trust, like non-for-profit organisation that owned a lot of properties in the area, and they leased them out to, I guess, less fortunate families, disadvantaged families. And what they were essentially doing was they were liquidating. As far as I know, they were liquidating a third or a quarter of their portfolio or something like that to go and put the money into quite a big property that they were going to renovate, and I think put a lot of the families into almost like a massive unit block or something, I think. There was a story with something like that, and they were looking to, I think what it was, it got to the point where they were shifting this bunch of properties and they needed a couple more done just before this deadline to clear for these renovations that were coming up. And I think that was a motivation that really allowed me to kind of work quite hard on it and get negotiate quite hard and get a really good price for it.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So obviously they would have had a few other properties in their portfolio and you would have seen, how much they were. So in comparable to the one that you actually purchased, did you actually see how much the other ones were actually worth as well? Because, it was listed at $299 on the market. We always know that some vendors might overprice their property and that's why it sits on the market for too long. There'd be other prices that are well priced. How much do you think that property was realistically worth if they actually put it on the market and, sold it at at the market value, which obviously sold for you under market value, but how much do you think it would have been really worth?
Well, there was two things here. So they had renovated a bunch of their other properties, did quick cosmetic facelifts, any of them that were a bit dilapidated, and they were able to sell them for quite good money. This one was almost halfway through, or they just started a reno, and they never completed it. I'm not really sure why, but all they did in this one was they replaced the kitchen. It was really weird. They put a brand new Caesar stone kitchen in this thing and they never finished it off. So it was an absolute steal for me. Like they come in and have this brand new kitchen. It was a bloody big kitchen as well, with the Caesar stone. And but I think because they hadn't finished it off, it was like a half-done project that they were still trying to get a top dollar for. Essentially, I think if they'd listed this thing at around like 260,000, I think they probably would have sold it very quickly at 250. But I mean, as you know, when people overlist things and then they go stale, it's very hard to get that interest back, and people think there's something wrong with it. I think it was probably worth around about that 250,000 in as-is condition. And I think post-reno, after what I did, it probably would have been worth back up towards that really very high twos, maybe 300,000. But that was after full reno, so they definitely tried for too much at the start.
Being the fifth property in Gordon's portfolio, it's safe to say he was getting the hang of things in the Sydney market at this point. But expanding his portfolio into Brisbane meant he had to start his ground research from scratch.
I think to start with, I kind of found areas that I wanted to invest in. I was following infrastructure, following a lot of different spending, trying to avoid oversupplied markets, and I was really trying to really get myself into a good market that I could still afford. At the time, I still wasn't on a very big salary. I think I was probably in the 50,000s kind of per annum salary. So I still had to look in the affordable corridor. So I was looking sub 300 for a really good reno project that I could make a little bit of equity on, pull that back out and go put it into another deal. So pretty much was refining my areas, searching areas. The suburb that this one was in was a smaller suburb in a larger kind of, quite a big and popular council in Brisbane. But it was a smaller suburb within that's quite often overlooked. And we've actually picked up deals for there with clients in the through the buyers agency business as well, because people overlook this suburb because it's quite small. There's only about 2,000 people in there, which means there's only a very small housing market. So it's not one of the big suburbs that everyone puts in their search filters. So that really, this was a funny thing. I didn't even know in this suburb it was, and the agent, I was looking at one of her other properties, and she said to me, look, I've got this other one over here. It's a bit of a reno project. Would you like to have a look at it? And that's when I came across it. So it's kind of funny when that happened. I mean, it's just one of the other lessons I learned when I was in the pretty early years of my portfolio. I guess one of the things to look for sometimes is those suburbs that are often overlooked by other investors and even home buyers as well.
Has that also impacted on, I guess, the price value? Because being a smaller suburb, is it because it's also a sort of a niche type of suburbs? That means it's limited supply. It could also have an impact on it. Just because the reason why I'm asking that is I used to live in a very smaller suburb, and I'll give you the name of it. I used to live next to a suburb called Putney in Sydney. Putney is a reasonably well-known suburb, which is next to also Gladesville. But it was a tiny, tiny pocket. And then there was even a smaller suburb called Tennyson Point, which is actually where I lived. And I had never, ever heard of it before. I heard of Gladesville, I heard of Ryde and so forth growing up. And I grew up in those areas. But then when we moved into that particular area, it was so small that whenever I told people that I lived down at Tennyson Point, they're like, where, what? I said, it's just this little pocket in, very, very close to the water by, Parramatta River. And eventually, obviously, we moved in there and people got to actually know where we lived and so forth. But what I discovered after a period of time, it was so limited in supply because there's not very many of those properties, particularly on the waterfront. It was priced very, very much of a premium type of market. Gladesville, yes, is a very expensive suburb. Putney, same thing as well. But Tennyson, I mean, it was kind of off the charts. And, the guys down the road from us, literally when it was going through that peak boom, we, not long before, when we sold our property, I think it was in the highs like 2 mil. Within about 12 months, when the boom was happening, the property just across the road jumped to like 3.5, 3.6 mil. I'm like, how is that possible in such a short period of time? And I guess it just goes to show that, I guess when there's limited supply of properties in the area and such a niche and pocket market, I noticed that, wow, prices can skyrocket pretty quickly. And I guess the question comes back down to is, did you find that similar effect happening within that smaller suburb that you purchased in?
Yeah, definitely. I definitely did, mate. It was funny because because of that reason, I think it makes it more of an owner-occupied driven market, because the local market actually really likes the area because it's not really sought after all that much by investors, which was a really funny kind of turn of events, because an investor probably would have picked that deal up if they'd come across it, but for some reason, it was being overlooked. I mean, obviously, initially overpriced as well. But yeah, it was obviously being overlooked by the potential from an investment point of view. And but in terms of the local owner-occupied demand, when there's renovated homes pop up, because obviously I own property in that suburb, so I'm always tracking it now. And whenever well-renovated properties pop up in that market, it's hit really hard by the owner-occupiers. So I think it definitely carries weight. I think that point definitely carries weight.
Yeah, that's fascinating. So it sounds like it is more of an owner-occupier type of market at this point in time. And I guess when you went in there and looking at it from that point of view, it changed, how it actually was portrayed. What I'm also wondering is, when you actually came across that particular one, how many type of properties were there sort of housing? Because maybe you can sort of just give a bit of background. What type of property was this? Was it actually a house, a townhouse, a villa?
This Aboriginal Housing Trust, not-for-profit, they built them pretty strong. It was a double brick, so exterior brick, interior brick wall, low set. This one was a 4-bed, 1-bath with a external carport as well. So pretty well an indestructible house. Very close, about 600 metres to the local uni it was just over, I think it was a 720 square metre R3, like medium density site. So that was probably, so 4-bed, 1-bath, low set brick.
Was there any development potential at that size? Because 700 square metres is pretty big.
Down the track, I think there could be. At the moment, I'm quite happy to hold tight and just leave that one as it is. But down the track, there's definite potential for it.
All right. Well, I'm really, really keen now to talk a little bit about this renovation. All right. It sounds like when you told me, I was like, what? I thought, Sam doesn't do his own work. He usually gets trades, people to help out and so forth. But this one sounds like you got hands on. You got straight into it, did the renovations yourself and so forth, and also got a few extra helping hands. Tell us a little bit about why actually you needed to do this type of renovation. Could you have done something else to it instead?
Yeah, look, for me, at that point in the portfolio, it was very hard for me to save deposits. I didn't have huge surplus income. I think back then interest rates were probably around that sort of time. They were probably around about 5.5%. So the portfolio was positive cash flow, but not to a huge extreme, just enough to supplement a little bit, but not enough to easily save more deposits on top. So it was back to the case of I needed to make money from every deal that I did. So this was just another one that I needed, sweat equity in there, really force value, buy it below market for one, and then force value on it so I could pull that equity back out and put it into another deal. So that's essentially what I was looking for. And back then, I was definitely a hands-on renovation man. I wasn't quite as busy as I am now with the business, running my own business. But back then, I was definitely looking for hands-on sort of renovation, value-add sort of style projects. And this one definitely fit the brief.
So tell us a little bit more about what type of renovations. Obviously, the kitchen didn't need to be touched, so we can leave that one out. But what did you actually do on the property now?
Yeah, look, we had one full exterior wall down the left-hand side, and this is probably quite another reason why owner-occupiers were probably turned off. Quite a portion of that wall had been graffitied, which you couldn't actually see from the street frontage. So it was on the narrow side that just had a footpath down the side, not the other quite open side that you drove in on. So it needed, that entire wall needed a clean. One of the beautiful things was, now I'd never actually come across this before, but the roof was what were they? Like, they were roof tiles, but they were not corrugated iron, so they were iron sheets, but I'd never seen them before. So like a collarbone full sheet, but they were tiles and widthways, and I'd never come across them before. And neither had the sales agent. So when I went back with the building and pest inspection, a few of them were dinted and they were leaking into one roof. And I said, look, you just can't buy these things anymore. We're going to have to re-roof the entire thing. So that's where I was able to negotiate a further discount. They agreed to do a 50%, we'll take care of 50%, you take care of 50%. So I was able to get another $3,000 reduction on that. Thankfully, the handyman that I used had a few of them lying spare at the back of his house, so he came out and replaced them while he did some other work, and it cost me nothing. So that was a great little value add on that one. But just a few different things in it was like there was sagging ceilings because it was double brick, and it had actually that brick faces had never been painted, so they were open brick, which is very, very porous material. So that the entire house interior needed a repaint, which was a bigger job than I realised, because I never realised, I guess, how porous that material was. So to put it in perspective, normally I would give a house 2, maybe 3 coats. This thing needed six coats of paint, because it just sucked it in. The first 2 coats, I did it and you couldn't even see it. You couldn't even see that I painted it, because it just sucked it into the material. It was crazy. And then the next 2 coats were almost like a base, and the 2 on top gave it actually a really nice finish. But the bathroom...
This was the internal, you're saying, the internal walls. Could you have actually considered, instead of getting more paint, to have actually done maybe a plaster over the...
We could have. I could have, but it was... I'd already kind of started. So when I was 2 coats in, I was like, well, surely that sealed it. So now we go on top. Plus, I was pretty, I guess, cash poor, like, in terms of that one. So I was trying to do it as much on a budget as I could.
I guess paint's cheaper than getting concrete or plaster.
Yeah, that's right. And it did come up looking pretty good when we were finished. And it was maybe an extra tub of paint, so maybe an extra $150. And obviously applying it as well, the time it took to apply it as well.
That's crazy. I mean, yeah, it sounds so much fun to have done it. But like, I remember when I did my first ever paint job, I was underwhelmed, or overwhelmed, I should say, because I painted a 3-bedroom, 2-bath townhouse in one of my investment properties. And I thought, yeah, it's going to take me maybe a few hours just to do. I totally underestimated it. Actually took me probably almost 3 days just to do the whole thing myself. And I did, no, I'm never doing that ever again, because it was just back-breaking work, and it was just so exhausting too. And I guess, I don't know too much about fumes and stuff like that, but after a while you just start smelling paint all the time, and you just kind of don't want to do it ever again. Did you get any of those kind of feelings? Because you obviously put 6 coats of paint. That would have taken...
Yeah, and it was the first time I'd ever used a spray gun. So yeah, it was... I was pretty well covered for the whole week in paint. I was a typical snow, like full snowman. Like, I looked white for the whole week, full grey hair and stuff. But it was a good experience, mate. It was different, but it was a good kind of transformation of that house as well.
After the break, we'll talk with Sam Gordon as he gives us a further glimpse into the realities of hands-on renovation.
It was very run down. Like, I think someone had definitely been smoky in it as well. So the house was just very dark, dingy.
We share tips for first-time renovators.
At the end of it, it's honestly probably the most cost-effective thing I've ever learnt with renovations is running people like that.
Gordon shares his worst moment in renovating history.
This is probably the lowest point of my life. I thought, and this is probably the biggest lesson I've ever learnt in renovation.
And that's coming up. I'm Tyrone Sharp, and you're listening to Property Investory. Are you interested in finding great deals like Sam Gordon does? If the answer is yes, then let Sam help you find them, since he does this all day, every day. I've asked Sam to offer a free 30-minute strategy session to help you put together an actionable property plan to help you build your portfolio just like him. To get your free strategy session, simply text 0499881040 and quote APS. Welcome back. Gordon and I jumped right in where we left off. He remembers this as being one of the worst moments in his renovation journey.
I can probably actually say, quite hand on heart, it's really the lowest point of my life was doing that bathroom. So what it was quite standard to Queensland. It was a separate toilet from the bathroom, and the bathroom needed a full makeover as well. And vanity tiles, all the rest of it, shower screens and whatnot as well. But the actual toilet in there, this is probably the lowest point of my life. I thought, and this is probably the biggest lesson I've ever learned in renovations, there's certain things you should put your time into and quite honestly do. And there's certain things you should just pay someone else to do that have done it before many, many times. And I'd never changed the toilet before. And it was because it was double brick, it was ridiculously hard to loosen this thing and get it off, loosen the cistern off. And essentially, that was all I was doing. I was just trying to change the cistern. I hadn't even changed the base of this thing, and I was trying to change it. It took me 4 hours to get this thing off, and I was just squatting in all this water had come out of the cistern and was sitting on the floor of this like 40-year-old housing commission house, just reeking of urine, and I was just sucking this, like just breathing this stuff in, and it was honestly, I walked out of it at the end, and I think I was I can't remember who I called. I called someone. I just said that this is the lowest point of my life. Like I just had to walk out of the house and just like hose myself off, and I felt so sick. It was disgusting.
I could just imagine you walking out of the house or running out of the house and puking all over the grass and going, I cannot do this ever again.
It was filthy. I just got the hose and I just hosed myself because I just needed to try to get the smell off. It was like you with that paint. That you got the paint stuck in the nose. I had it stuck in my nose for the whole day, and this is the thing, but right, you got to leverage what you can do or what you're good at, and just pay other people to do it. Because then, when I went and got the system and brought it back, as hard as it was to pull it off, it was that hard again to put the new one on. It was just a system I'd never seen before, and it was just I'd never done it before anyway. But I was trying to watch all the YouTube videos to learn as I was going, and it just didn't work. I just couldn't get it off, couldn't get it on, and the real lesson of the story came about a month after I released it out, and the actual bowl, the toilet bowl, had broken, and so they had to replace the whole toilet anyway.
Oh.
What a slap in the face. Eh?
I would have just said, no, I'm getting rid of this property from now on. I don't want bad memories to scar me forever like that.
It was one of those things I just had to say, yeah, all right, pay the bill, and I just tried to scrap it from memory. But yeah, considering it was really the lowest renovation point for sure in my life, definitely won't forget that one anytime soon.
I guess you've learnt your lesson: never install a toilet ever again yourself.
Yeah, I'll leave that one. I'll definitely leave that one.
Despite the horrific experience, Gordon ploughed through and began working on the rest of the house.
The big things were the bathroom. That was quite dilapidated. All the painting obviously needed to be done. It was very run down. Like I think someone had definitely been smoky in it as well. So the house was just very dark, dingy. Mainly and then there was also yard works. So the main things you always look to do in a reno, for cosmetic reno, keep it as low budget as possible, is your kitchen, your bathroom, your paint, your flooring, and all landscaping. And any fixtures and fittings, if they need to be done, like old door handles and window furnishings and stuff, you can do those pretty cheap most of the time as well. So I fully fitted that side of the house out as well for about $500. That was all door handles, and even I just got some cheap Venetians from Bunnings that overhung the window, so it was big enough to do it. I literally did the whole house for, I think it was about $450 or something, and it really popped against the fresh paint that went through it as well. So for the cost of that, it definitely added value on that side of things as well.
If you remember or recall, how much the whole renovation cost you, and after that, when you rented out, what kind of rental return did you get?
Yeah, so I'm pretty sure the entire thing was just a tad over $6,000. That was everything, and that included a new aircon unit as well.
Even the aircon unit must have cost you $1,000 at least.
Well, it shows how far that sweat equity does go. So this was a funny story, this one as well, because I finished work on this is one of the biggest lessons I reckon I could ever give. If I could ever teach anyone that was going to do their own reno, don't try and do it on weekends. If it is a proper full-blown reno, if you try and just do it on weekends, like I've done before, very first property is what I did. It took me about 6 weeks to fully renovate a 2-bedroom unit, just because I was doing it on weekends and after work, and it was just really hard to fit it in. So what I did with this one was I just took a week's annual leave, and I finished up work on a Friday arvo. I drove up to Brisbane from Sydney, picked up the keys on Saturday morning, and then did a full-blown reno till I think that Saturday night. I gave the keys back, slept there, and then drove home on the Sunday. Started work again on the Monday. So just did it over a full week, but knocked everything out and had it ready to go. But it's one of those big things that I'd always say is make sure you set yourself some time and just go out there and smash it. Don't try and just fit it in around other stuff. It's how renos drag out so long.
Yeah, I've heard those stories many, many times. It's like, I think I'll just do it in my free time on a weekend whenever I can. But you get caught up, and then weekends, if you've got family, you just got other commitments and so forth, and it ends up never getting done. And I totally agree. If I had just block out a whole week, whatever I do anyway, I mean, whether or not I'd be working on a project and stuff, if I blocked it out for a whole week, it's just full focus. It sounds like, you did an amazing, job. Obviously, there's some challenges as we discussed just now. But did you actually do all this yourself the whole time, or did you actually hire anyone else to come in, or even get some mates to come and help?
because it was Brizzy, like I didn't have any mates up in Brizzy at the time, or, I was born and bred and pretty much everyone was in Sydney. So I didn't have anyone that could come and help me on this one. But what I did do was I hired a handyman just for a day to come in and help me finish off a bunch of different things. That's probably one of the biggest things, biggest lesson I learned out of renos was do the labor intensive stuff that you can, do all that yourself. And then when it comes to stuff where you could use someone else, like the kitchens, like the bathroom on this one, there's just a bunch of little things that I knew were going to take me a lot of time. But if I built different things, like I built the vanity, right? We ripped the old one out, built a new one. And it was even just things like that and cutting it in, things that I'd never done before. To tell you the truth, I didn't even have the tools at the time to do it either, being the first like proper full-blown reno that I did too. You just learn a lot of different things from those people and you can smash things out so much quicker. And a handyman typically costs you, I think he cost me about, I don't think I paid him cash. It was like $250 for the day or something just to come in, and we just smashed out so much stuff. Probably stuff that probably would have taken me, again, like the toilet, if I'd waited if I'd paid him to do it, he probably could have done it quite quickly as well, having done that style of things before. But yeah, it's probably 4 days worth of work. He and I smashed out in about a day as well. So it was it definitely pays dividends, hiring people you can, doing the labour stuff you can yourself, but when there's stuff you need two people for, or it's going to take you a bit of time, you've never done it before, get that expertise to come in and help you, and you're almost the labour for him and he'll just smash it out.
Yeah. I guess in many ways, you reflect back over this and go, okay, it's great experience because then at least you know what people are actually doing, because I myself, I've hired renovators to be able to help me do one of my other properties remotely because I wasn't able to get there, especially with COVID. Can't even get down to where I'm supposed to be. And I trusted this person. He did an amazing job because when he sent the photos across, the property manager said he's an amazing tradesperson. I was very, very impressed. But the good thing is, while I was communicating with him, because I had done some renovations on my dad's property and a few other investment properties I've had as well, I knew exactly how to talk to him. Because when, tradespeople talk, they've got their own lingo, especially when they're talking about electricians. They don't call them electrician, they'll call them a sparky or a chipper instead of a carpenter. It's like those kind of lingo. And then they talk specific things about, wiring a snake down the wall. Like you're going, what? But if you've never ever done that before, you won't have a clue what they're talking about. So it's things like that. I guess I've had some experience just like yourself. When you're actually working with tradespeople, you understand their kind of lingo, and it makes a huge difference because when it comes time to actually get things done, at least they explain it to you and you don't feel like you're being ripped off, because tradespeople can, take you for a ride if you've got absolutely no idea. And I've had that experience before. But then if they know that you know what they're talking about, they'll actually do things properly and genuinely. And I think the hardest thing that I found with tradespeople is actually finding good tradespeople that will come on time and actually do the work. So yeah, it's all part of the learning experience. And I think doing it once is fine. Doing it twice, yeah, it's okay. But doing it 3 or 4 times over and over again, it'd be like slap on the wrist, get someone else to do it, because your time's probably well worth better spent buying other properties instead.
Yeah, definitely, mate. 100%. Sorry, I'll just touch on one thing there as well that you were saying, kind of came to me as you were saying that, because it's so true. In terms of that and knowing who to trust and how to work with them and stuff as well. One other little thing that I picked up on that side of things was when you're doing jobs like that, if you are going to go out and do it yourself, like you doing it remotely is fantastic. If you have people that you can trust to do it. But if you were going to go and do it yourself, one of the best things I reckon you can do is put them on an hourly rate and just get them to work with you. Because then, they're not just going to bludge and fight us around and do the rest of it. If they're on an hourly rate working with you, and then you just keep pushing them, just keep going and going and going, you get so much done for such a cost-efficient price, at the end of it. It's honestly probably the most cost-effective thing I've ever learned with renovations is running people like that. And they like it because if you're in there in the trenches with them as well and doing all this stuff with them, and even a lot of them like teaching you different stuff as well, like kind of passing on different stuff as well, mate. You'd be surprised how much you could get done in a day just working one-on-one with someone like that.
That is such a great point I think you've raised there. And I totally agree with you, because I think once they actually know that you can actually get hands-on, they know that you're not just going to be just sort of standing back and just manage the whole project. I mean, it's great to do it that way, but if they actually know that you can actually understand what they're doing, they really, really appreciate it and actually do a better job for you. So that's a fantastic tip. Excellent. So let's talk a little bit about, now that you've finished the renovation, tell us a little bit about what happened after that. How long did it take you to get a tenant in there? Did you get it revalued? What happened straight after that?
Yeah, definitely. Look, so this one I paid $212 for, and I all up the reno. I'm pretty sure it came in at about the $6,000. Now, when we leased this, so I also negotiated early access on this one. Obviously, it was vacant; they didn't care. So I got in. It was a week before it settled, so I got in for that week before and knocked the full reno out. By the time I left on the Sunday, it actually settled on the Monday, so it was kind of perfect timing. They listed it for lease. We actually got $310 a week for that one, which was kind of awesome. I can't remember what that came in at, but it was almost 8% return. I think on the standalone house was pretty awesome. So yeah, we got the $310 a week, roughly probably $218 purchase price when you factor in the reno, and so the way I still operate today and the way I was working back then was I would wait 90 days for post settlement. Go out and order a bank val, and that one actually came in at 280,000. The bank val came in at 280,000, so I had a massive chunk of equity, ripped that straight out, and then bought one about a kilometre down the road. did almost the same thing, probably 6 months after that one. So by the time it had settled, bought the other one, settled that one, and yeah, so it was pretty good.
So I guess for listeners out there and viewers as well, they're probably going, "Wow, that's really good." It took you a week, dedicated time to do the renovation. Within that week, and you waited 90 days. So I'd probably say, let's say, 120 days after everything was all done, you can actually draw out equity. So if you got it at revalued at 280, you would have made, and you purchased it, say 220. Let's just round the numbers up. You would have made about a little bit over 60K in terms of equity from there. Obviously, the bank's not going to give you the full 60K because they're going on like basically an 80% val. But with that, I guess that explains to people how you can actually leapfrog from one property to another. Because if you draw out that, actually, how much were you able to pull out of that to be able to use as another deposit?
I was able to pull out 90%. So the way a lot of the banks work as well is if you go with the same lender and then get a bank val with that same lender and pull it back out of the same one, because I bought it at 90%, I was able to refi back up at 90% again. So I was essentially able to pull out over 50,000 out of that deal to put into the next one. And you only pay the LMI on that difference of the top up amount. And really, it's how I was investing at the time. Still invest that way today. Still invest that way for clients. It's how you can keep pulling out and just keep moving. Because if you make that money, the bulk of that was essentially made in the purchase on the way in. We bought below market. We probably bought 40 grand below market. Made that money. Yes, we value added with the reno, and obviously the cash flows were a lot stronger from doing the reno as well. But it's really all in that purchase, and was able to pull it back out, roll into the next deal. Did it again and again, and it's definitely a pretty solid, and it's very repeatable. That's what I love about it. I mean, that's how I obviously got the portfolio the size I've got today is from that exact kind of system, the systemized approach, buying below market, force value where you can, but then just continually pulling that equity out and moving forward.
If you learned a lot from the episode, stay tuned for future episodes where Sam Gordon and I'll continue to share with you more property stories from his own journey. In the meantime, I've asked Sam to give us a free 30-minute strategy session to help you put together an actionable property plan to help you build your portfolio just like him. To get your free strategy session, simply visit australianpropertyscout.com.au and fill out the contact form. Or you can text 04 99 88 10 40 and quote APS. Thanks for listening.